Hello, Mr. Treasurer. In this presentation, I'll be just speaking on your responsibilities and your opportunities. So what that'll look like is at the end of this lecture, I hope you'll understand the general officer responsibilities, so responsibilities every officer holds. Understand your responsibilities as the treasurer, and then identify opportunities that you can act on. And finally, outside of this presentation, but in this module, you'll synthesize your responsibilities and opportunities into one easy to understand description. So first, let's go over what all officers need to do as officers. So first one is flexible and kind of determined by the venerable dean, but you should hold office hours for 2 hours a week. This is basically just sitting down saying from 12 to 2 on Sundays, I'm going to work on acacia stuff. That way you can prioritize your time better and organize it better. Um, this one's very important is to review policies and procedures that pertain to your position. Um, and then when it mentions do not violate the Constitution, like if you're going to update them at all, just make sure you review the Constitution, make sure that it doesn't clash with it at all. Monthly one-on-ones with the Venerable Dean. So obviously you're going to pass by the Venerable Dean, see him at officer meetings and discuss different kinds of treasurerly needs. But there will be times where you should sit down and go more in detail of just exactly how things are going each month. So that's something you'll need to schedule with the Venerable Dean. This one doesn't so much pertain to you, but it pertains to other officers that in relation to you. So each officer needs to create position budgets and present it to the treasurer, you, 2 weeks before the first meeting in January. This is not something you're going to be able to do now, but something next year we can enforce. Also, complete training, which we're doing now, and then attend the transition session in January. Be at the chapter house 1 week before school begins in the fall and 3 days in the spring, unless given good and sufficient reason beforehand. And lastly, and very importantly, is to prepare and send weekly reports to the secretary 24 hours before the officer meeting. It doesn't really have to be 24 hours, it just needs to be before the officer meeting. Now, why? Why not just come to chapter with your report? Well, I want to get away from using the officer meeting as a way to just build up the agenda. All officers should come prepared to the officer meeting, knowing kind of what written down what the report's going to be and everything. And that way, it's not just creating it; it's just you guys fine tune it with discussion, and then come chapter before chapter, we'll be able to post an agenda, let the members know what's going to be talked about, and we'll all come in a lot more prepared, and all the meetings will run more smoothly. Now, going into your own responsibilities, the way I organized this was using the PER system, so the planning, recording, and reporting system. And so we'll just go through each one of those steps and how they pertain to you as the treasurer. First one is planning, which in your position is actually budgeting. And very big part of the chapter sets the tone for everything, sets, a lot of times the budget really can say a lot about an organization, where its values are, and everything like that. And so I got a nice little table here of just the what, when, and who of budgeting. And so just kind of going through the progression, the budgeting process starts 4 weeks before the new term, or basically even just say it's a winter break, outgoing officers of transition, you just got elected as treasurer. You're going to start asking your other newly elected officials or positions to send to request that they have budgets to you 2 weeks before the new term. And so that's the next one, where officers need to have those done 2 weeks before. And the reason why is it gives you time. So like the 4 days, so from 14 days before the new term to 10 days where you need to have a draft made up by working with the Venerable Dean. And then with that draft, everyone, the whole entire executive council can meet before the new term, discuss it, make sure they're good with it as executive council, and then they'll post it for all the members to kind of review before the first chapter. Come the first chapter, you guys will discuss it and likely probably not vote on that chapter, but the final approved voted on budget needs to be done by the second chapter of the term. So that's basically an outline of how the budgeting process goes. That way it's ready to go once we get off on our feet and officers can start making expenses and we all know what we're doing. Some things, so these next two slides are just going to outline Acacia headquarter fees, so fees from our headquarters, and also fees that you'll encounter from WSU, just so you get an idea of what you're looking forward ahead to in budgeting. They should already be included in the past budget, but it helps to know on, just kind of visually where, how much, and where, and who, and all that. So as you can see, a lot of these you already know about. Pledge dues, their amounts are all pretty much the same. When you want to take notice is when. So pledge dues, initiation dues are always done before the ritual. So before the pledge induction, before the initiation. That is one of the biggest problems we have, and where we let guys get initiated, they don't pay, and they eventually never pay. And that's $240 left on us as a chapter, and that's how we get in debt most of the time, is that we just don't get guys to pay those dues before they get initiated. One thing that's usually forgotten is that we do have per capita dues. So yeah, you pay your due to get in the fraternity, and then just during once a year during your time, your undergraduate years, you have to pay to stay in the fraternity. After that, as an alumni, no payment. You're uh, free member, don't have to pay anything. But you need to pay 140 per member, and that's in October, and it's based on our roster, which will be updated in September. A separate one is Willis Insurance. So that's not really through our headquarters, but it is for our whole entire chapter insurance. So that way, if something goes bad, we can fall on them to help us out. So that's $175 a member, and that kind of varies year by year. And it'll also be in October, and you'll be contacted separately from Willis about it. Officer R&O insurance, that's something separate from Willis. It's something you'll pay to the headquarters actually. And it's just insurance for specifically for the officers if something goes wrong. So making sure that you guys have your own protection. And for us without a house, or we don't own a house, it's just $60 and it'll be assessed in the spring, as well as a $300 thing for ALA or conclave, whichever those lie on that year, and every chapter has to pay for it. It pays for 2 registrations of 2 members to go, so always plan to have 2 guys go, and maybe even try to budget to help them with their travel expenses. Or you can look to talk to the Vermont Dean. You guys can talk to the Gage and Gavel, or Housing Corporation Board, who controls the W2 Acacia account. It's where, like, whenever alumni donate to us, it goes to this W2 Acacia account through the foundation, and that's where we can get money for academic reasons or these kind of expenses, like getting into these ALAs or conclaves. So that'll be in the spring. VD Summit happens very beginning of January. VD will go. It should be paid in late fall. It's $50, so nothing too big. Again, that's one where we need a budget to help the Venerable Dean get there, or ask for help. Lastly, and these are not the only ones, but there's some side things like getting Pythagoras or pledge pins for new pledges, depending on whether you want to keep them for yourselves and reuse them each pledge process, or you just want to let them own them. They are $5.75 each, so the Pythagoras itself is $5.75 and the pledge pin is $5.75. And then those are you just need to contact Acacia headquarters, Gretchen Matthews. So that'd be gmatthews@acacia.org. That's the person you need to email, and just ask them for how many you want, and pay them over the phone with card, or however else you want to do it. But over the phone with the card is probably going to be what's going to happen. So apart from Acacia headquarter fees, are some things with WSU. For the Center for Sorority and Greek Fraternity Sorority Life, they assess, well, through IFC, we pay about $35 a member. That might have changed. I think that's an old number, but it's somewhere around there, and it's in the spring, and we do that per member, so make sure our roster's updated. And then there's other fees that I'll just always access, and they're around $350, probably more now. So that's kind of like the base fee, and then depending on how large your chapter is the $35 fee. Other than that, in January, oh, it says October. Excuse me for that. This is wrong. GLA happens in January, and you'll be charged in January for it. $120 to send 3 of our members: the Venerable Dean, the Senior Dean, and the Standards Board Chair. And then there's Greek Week in the spring, which is around $250. I don't know. You have to pay to the Greek Week Committee. Again, that's a varying number, but it's around there, so it's a pretty large sum. Again, forget the when. I forgot to update it. And then there's homecoming, and again, in the fall, not in the spring. And I'm not sure who you pay for, but it does cost just almost as much as Greek Week to be involved in the activities of homecoming. So just be ready for that kind of expense, which will be around, again, like I said, 250, 300, something like that. So here's some of your responsibilities as far as in the budgeting. When you're taking these different fees that you have to plan for, or different kind of events you guys want to do, what you want to do is review last year's budget amounts and actual amounts. If there aren't any actual amounts, try to talk to the old treasurer and get some of those, at least the crucial ones, especially maybe if we did do Greek week, get that number for sure or anything else like that. Um, you want to, and I said this already, but report to the officers last year's budget amount and actual amount. So when you're asking for these officers to create their position budgets, try to give them something, to base off of, like, a benchmark of like, oh, about how much money should I ask for, kind of thing. Work closely with the Venerable Dean and financial advisor and ensure that the budget is properly organized, realistic, and follows WSU Acacia's priorities. So organized means that it's in a good normal kind of format. Expenses come first, revenues next, and then income less expenses. It's easy to read. There should already be a budget in place that you'll be able to use. But if maybe it's not properly organized, it could be better organized. Help that happen. Make sure that the budget itself is just realistic. We're not going out and thinking that we're going to get 35 pledges for some reason and think that we're going to get all this revenue when we're not. Be realistic in your expectations. And then lastly, follow WSU Acacia's priorities. So we're not putting $1,000 in social and then only $100 in rush and all these other different things. We need to be able to make sure that where the money goes really follows where our priorities are. So obviously, like, one of them is human service, and then to keep the chapter alive, rush needs to be funded. And that doesn't mean just throwing money at them uselessly, hoping for stuff, but making sure that if the recruitment chairman is only asking for $250, say, okay, well, are you really planning all the events, and are you doing all that you can to make sure we have a good recruitment? Because we'll put our money behind you if you have the proper plans and projects and things like that. Utilize a program to help budget, such as a budgeting tool through the U.S. Bank. That's who we bank through on their online tools, or QuickBooks or Excel. Usually it'll be Excel. And when you're doing the budget, always have an oh shit line in the budget. So always a line that, just money that's put aside just in case if something happens and you forgot to include something, or just something else happens, a break in the house that was no one's, fault or reason. Just, we need to have that money there just for the oh shit times. And then separate from the oh shit is savings. So something that's going to build up year to year towards like a capital project, like us getting a new house, or us getting a TV, or us getting furniture, anything like that. So now we're moving on from the planning stage. Let's go into recording. This is where most of your time is going to be spent. So I'm going to talk about it weekly, and then we'll just keep it to weekly, and I'll mention some things you need to do not so weekly. So when officers make Acacia-related purchases, have them keep their receipts and turn them into. So that's kind of how this works: is they go out, spend, get the stuff, and then you reimburse them. That's the system. And when you do this, you want to record these transactions on the appropriate budget line in the budget. So someone went out and bought, a bunch of food for an event. They came back with a receipt, and you put down under their officer line for that event how much money that was. Additionally, record all transactions, so officer purchases, when members pay their dues, anything like that, whenever money's being exchanged, in the receipt book, and give out receipts for each. So you'll have a receipt book, it'll have the multiple little pages, and you write down onto it, and then you can give them the yellow one, you keep what's in the book, and then that way we have a physical form of recording everything that happens. And then they do as well. Update the budget each week with revenues, so dues and expenses, officer purchases. Inform officers the remaining budget balances. You especially want to do this when you're noticing that, say, maybe one officer has blown through 75% of his budget, but only a fourth of the semester has gone by. And you can tell that he's only had so many events and he has many more planned ahead. He's off budget, so on a weekly just kind of basis, make sure guys are staying on budget and that it's going well. Lastly, record fees that members accrue and update their account balances on Negafy. That's something I won't cover here, but you'll learn through the outgoing treasurer. Last part of the PER system is reporting. This is something that is actually surprisingly important for you. This goes a lot into accountability and just making sure everything is transparent and known, and that members are paying their dues, basically. So you're going to report which members are delinquent. All, not just new. So each week, if Tommy is delinquent every week this semester, you're going to say Tommy's name every chapter. That way the whole chapter knows and Tommy knows that he is delinquent and that something needs to happen with him. We'll record the overall account balance of the chapter, so how much money we have in the account, And with that, give us an idea of, okay, so what are some of the major expenses, revenues that happened the past week? That way we kind of understand how the account balance is going up and down. And lastly, report fines given out during the past week. That's very important to fines actually doing their jobs, letting guys know when when they are being fined in real time, so that way they can correct their behaviors accordingly. All right. One thing I can't skip over when talking about the treasurer position is membership accountability. You are one of the bigger accountability guys. If you fail to keep members accountable, the chapter will fail. Obviously, money won't come in, but money will go out and we'll just fail. I love this quote from Stephen Covey: accountability breeds responsibility. So if you keep them accountable, they'll respond accordingly. So, and what this means, so how do you keep members accountable? Well, first you have a strict policy that you do follow and remind everyone of. But furthermore, on a more kind of daily basis, keeping members accountable includes contacting them regularly, setting up payment plans, and following up on those payment plans. So not only would you have, say, like there's this standard rule of 30, 60, 90. So the guy goes, bills are due, or dues are late after 30 days of them being posted. And then if they're late, if they still haven't paid them 60 days later, then maybe they'll go on social probation. And if they haven't paid them 90 days later, then they'll be put up for membership review on whether they're going to get expelled or not. And a lot of times, when guys get into these situations with this 30, 60, 90, they'll be like, okay, 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 I can't give you all the money now, but can I set up a payment plan? Okay, cool. That's basically like a contract between you, you're representing the chapter, and that person saying, all right, you can't pay it all now, and maybe you can't even pay it all this semester, but you are going to commit to paying, this amount each month or week. And if you get off that plan, if you start being delinquent on that, same 30, 60, 90 applies. If they don't follow that plan, then the consequences will follow. So, we're almost done. Just want to point out some opportunities you have because although treasure might seem like it has a lot of responsibilities, and you do, it's not all on your shoulders. But you do also have some cool opportunities you can do through the treasure position. And excuse me for this typo, um, but so but there is a lot of opportunities. So the only real limitation is yourself. How much can you push yourself, how creative you're willing to be, and ultimately the limits you set for yourself. So make some cool goals and don't forget that you can do some cool things with this position. So let's talk about some of those. So some of the cool things opportunities you can do is help start a fund to save for a new house, save for a project for the house, like a TV or a game system or new furniture, create a new, better budgeting system, or kind of similar to above is start a capital project. So it's larger project, like a new house would be a capital project, something that's large and is going to take multiple years for us to accomplish. And so that's pretty much it for this presentation. I've gone very briefly into a lot of what needs to be done for the treasurer, but those are the key things that need to be done to make sure that it happens. And more details than that would be included in the treasurer gold book and also the treasurer's binder, which you'll receive. And there's always, me for asking questions or anyone else. But now moving from this presentation in this module, I want you to go to activities, and that you'll summarize what you learned here. So without using any other reference to this presentation or gold book or anything, just off the top of your head, test yourself. How well do I know my responsibility and opportunities? And just put in one nice, easy to use summary paragraph. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, and I hope you have a good semester.